From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South, and I am Soini Gray. The far-right candidate in Brazil, Jair Bolsonaro, has promised to exile or imprison his opponents if they do not submit to the law. In a speech broadcast to supporters in the main avenue of Sao Paulo, the former army captain said that if elected, he will use the armed forces to combat any violence which may follow his election. He said he will seek permission for this from Congress. He also said he would use the army for routine street patrols and describe the country as being at war. The Supreme Electoral Court has responded to accusations of electoral fraud against supporters of Jair Bolsonaro. Members of the court defended the electronic voting system and said there were no irregularities in the first round of the elections. They also confirmed that they haven't reached a ruling on the alleged illegal financing of fake news by the far-right Social Liberal Party against the left-wing Workers' Party. They said they will meet this Monday with agencies in charge of detecting fake news.
In relation to the alleged crimes, the main ones were contracting illegal advertisements, the spread of fake information to sway election results, and vote buying. These are the crimes that are being investigated by the federal police.
Hundreds of supporters of Jair Bolsonaro took to the streets of Sao Paulo on Sunday. These demonstrations followed women-led protests across the world against him. On Saturday in Sao Paulo alone, over 40,000 people marched against the rise of the far right.
People from over 100 cities in Brazil and across the world rose to say no to Jair Bolsonaro. They support Workers' Party candidate Fernando Haddad as part of a call to action by women's groups to prevent the return of a military dictatorship.
I escaped Brazil during the years of the dictatorship. It's horrible to even consider that the people might elect a fascist leader to power.
Chauvinism, fascism, homophobia and racism were all condemned by demonstrators. They're also against Bolsonaro's economic plan that calls for the privatization of all of Brazil's industries.
I took to the street today to defend my own job and to stop a major crime against our nation, to stop the privatization of Petrobras and the inhumanity that a Bolsonaro government represents.
These demonstrations took place just days after news broke out about the Social Liberal Party's alleged illegal financing of fake news against the Workers' Party.
Fake news are nothing new. It's how lies are spread. But the digital age has made them that much more dangerous. Many of us are just realizing the absurdity of this situation. This is unprecedented in human history, the way the worst of the worst are rising to power. But many can see what's going on. What's interesting is that those who are seeing through the veil are rising in numbers. We're going through some turbulence, but this will pass.
During the day of protests, Haddad appeared in Fortaleza with nearly 50,000 people welcoming him. On October the 28th, Brazil will go to the polls once more, and the result will echo across the world.
Moving on to Mexico, the caravan of Honduran migrants are continuing their risky trek across the U.S. border. Thousands are currently walking from Ciudad Hidalgo towards Tapachula in the state of Chiapas. On Sunday, Mexican authorities allowed over 600 migrants through the border, but thousands more decided to cross the river by swimming or on handmade rafts. They criticized the slowness in the processing of their requests to make their way to the U.S. legally.
We decided to join those who were going. This is not political. This comes from hunger, from the drought. It's for prosperity, for a better life. This is not political.
We are suffering for our families, for our children. They force our children to war in gangs. They kill our kids if we don't obey it.
And more Hondurans are trying to join the caravan. Our correspondent in Tegucigalpa, Gilda Silva-Strucci, tells us more.
The migrant caravan keeps organizing throughout the country. People is calling from different spots to gather all together towards the border and to reach the big caravan in Mexico. Many Hondurans say they have no fear related to the government's threats and restrictions. The situation in Honduras is so severe that people prefer to live in large groups rather than remaining in the country. Meanwhile, the government continues saying that about 2,000 people will be returned.
U.S. President Donald Trump has once again spoken out against the advancing caravan. He wrote on Twitter that full efforts are being made to stop the onslaught of illegal aliens from crossing our southern border. People have to apply for asylum in Mexico first, and if they fail to do that, the U.S. will turn them away. Previously, President Trump had threatened to cut all aid to countries in the region if the caravan isn't stopped. And Mexican police briefly stopped the caravan as it headed towards the city of Tapachula. The authorities said they are simply trying to keep them safe and help them move in an orderly manner inside Mexican territory. This follows statements made by the Mexican President Enrique Peña Nieto condemning the methods migrants are using to enter Mexico.
This evening, an unprecedented situation happened on the border between Ciudad Hidalgo, Chiapas, and Tecunumán, Guatemala. Violent entry into the country not only threatens our sovereignty, but also puts the migrants themselves at risk.
On Saturday, the Honduran President Juan Orlando Hernandez traveled to Guatemala to meet his counterpart Jimmy Morales. They discussed helping the thousands of migrants to return home.
I want to assure all Honduran migrants that we have deployed an official migration team to help all of you return to our country. We are also willing to provide legal assistance and economic help to migrants depending on what kind of business they want to open, in order to improve their lives and their communities.
Part of the migrant caravan remained stuck in Guatemala at the bridge of the Suchiate River. Some of them joined Guatemalans in commemorating the revolution of 1944.
Organized campesinos and trade unionists are marking the October 20th revolution of 1944. It was overthrown 10 years later with the intervention of the CIA in similar fashion to what happened in the recent fraudulent election in Honduras.
Fraud and interference by the United States. That's why Honduras is in crisis. There's unemployment, violence, corruption, and that is why they're saying enough, and they're leaving the country.
The celebration is being held in the municipal park of Tecunumán, Department of San Marcos. It's here where the Honduran migrant caravan is taking shelter. While en route to the United States, they are speaking out against what they call an imperialist intervention in their country.
We asked President Trump that even with armed forces, we will enter the United States to mount pressure so that they allow us in, because he left President Juan Orlando as the powerful in Honduras.
While more than 8,000 Honduran migrants are waiting to cross the Mexican border, among them are hundreds of children who are eating scrap food right before the eyes of the UNICEF.
We are vulnerable for our children, because yesterday we were extremely thirsty and we are withstanding the heat here. I don't know what to say, not sure if we are going to be able to pass through or if we are going to be sent back to our country.
The migrant caravan is comprised of people that claim to be victims of poverty, professionals and small entrepreneurs who say they hope they won't have to return anytime soon.
This is the first time in Honduras history that I see that people have decided to leave, to get away from a regime not only oppressive, but a regime which is completely ending the country's economy.
And on the morning of October 20th, another large group of migrants broke a police fence on the border of Aguas Calientes in Honduras to join the stalled caravan on the Mexican border.
Mexico's Meteorological Service has confirmed that Hurricane Willa has strengthened to a Category 4 storm as it moves towards the country's Pacific coast. Willa is forecast to bring life-threatening storm surges, wind and rainfall over portions of west central and southwestern Mexico. Hurricane and tropical storm warnings have been issued. Recent rainfall has already softened the ground in some places. It's feared new rains may cause mudslides and cause rivers to overflow. A security guard has died in Mexico City in a shooting at the home of the retired Cardinal Norberto Rivera Carrera. According to local media, at least 3 men were involved in the attack. The authorities believe the group wanted to rob the home. Rivera has been an influential figure in the Catholic Church for years, but has been accused of covering up sexual abuse cases. He was inside the house but was not harmed. Time for the first break of this newscast. More news after this.
Our actions have an impact on the environment. It's our responsibility to change for the sake of our planet. Let's be part of this transition. Watch, preserve, and protect your Green Zone. Wednesdays, only on Telesur. Telesur brings you special interviews with social and political personalities. Monday, from Washington. Tuesday, from Mexico. Wednesday, from Caracas. Thursday, from Quito. Friday, from Havana. Analysis about our continent's reality. Weekdays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. Ecuador's former Vice President Jorge Glass has been transferred to a prison in the city of Latachunga. Via Twitter, Glass's lawyers said the move is political revenge against the former vice president, and he said his security won't be guaranteed. Glass was sentenced to 6 years in prison for allegedly receiving illicit payments from the Brazilian construction company Odebrecht. This weekend, the National Congress of Venezuela's Communes was held in Caracas with the participation of President Nicolas Maduro. Community leaders at the event discussed social and economic challenges and how to defend the country's democracy and sovereignty. They supported the president's cause to contribute proposals for Venezuela's economic recovery program. And the president also condemned the attacks against his government by foreign powers.
We are defending democracy by not accepting the insolent statements by satellite states of imperialism. We must focus on how our democracy is gaining strength, especially in matters of the economy. We have presented our 2019 budget to the National Constituent Assembly. If we compare our budget to Colombia or Argentina or even the United States, then we can see how much money we invest in our public services compared to them.
The president also spoke out against what he called the interventionist measures of the European Union.
In Europe, they can't stop talking about Venezuela. I say this to the EU's representatives. You can't stop talking about Venezuela, but you don't know Venezuela. You only get reports from the U.S. State Department and then make decisions based on that. Decisions that are of an interventionist and neocolonialist nature. So I say this to Federica Mogherini. If you want to see real social democracy, come visit our communities. Come see our people.
And Venezuela's Foreign Minister Jorge Arias reacted to an interview by U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, where he spoke about the economic sanctions imposed on Venezuela. In the interview, Pompeo said, "You've seen the sanctions that we put in place, not just against the country. Sometimes they have an adverse impact on the people of Venezuela." Arias reacted by saying the U.S. Secretary of State admits that the sanctions are an attack on the people. In Colombia, at least 11 people, including 5 children, died on Sunday when a landslide buried 3 homes in a low-income neighborhood in Barranquilla. Rescue operations were carried out by the local community with assistance from the fire department, civil defense, and the Red Cross. 3 children who had been buried were discovered alive. Landslides are common during the rainy season in Colombia's mountainous region.
So, I came to see what happened, and I grabbed a shovel and I started to dig to find people, and we pulled out 3. And I left because I couldn't go on, because it's hard to see all those people buried there.
We requested that the National Army come to be able to, in record time, take out the bodies of the deceased, which at this time are approximately 11 people.
Heavy rainfall in Nicaragua has caused new landslides, killing 4 people. This has raised the death toll from recent rains to 20. Authorities have declared a state of emergency in 6 municipalities and in the capital, Managua. As the rest of the country remains on alert, the government is providing victims with food and medical supplies. And heavy rain since Thursday have flooded thousands of homes in Trinidad and Tobago. Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley has declared it a national disaster. Luckily, there are no reports of deaths so far, only of minor injuries. Many residents had to be rescued from their roofs by neighbors in private boats.
I try to maintain my cool, right? And the persons were panicking a lot. Because I said earlier, two guys almost drowned me. They were both drowning at the same time, and I was trying to save the both of them. And they both were pushing me down into the water. So it was like, then there was a couple who was like Jack and Rose. They were holding on to an electricity pole. No, the water was like halfway up the electricity pole. Right? And they were holding on to the pole. I swam for them 3 times. From where I was like about 200 meters away, and they were afraid to come.
Hundreds of people have taken to the streets in a pacifist march in Washington, D.C. They gathered outside the Pentagon to protest against U.S. military action overseas. They say political parties in the country receive money from the business of war. They say the U.S. economy is based on killing people.
This genocide that's going on throughout the world in our name, you know, and I do not consent. I do not consent to my country. That I'm proud to be an American, but this is disgraceful that we are going and murdering or being complicit in the murder of people all around the world. And I'm tired of it, and we should all be tired of it.
And now on to sports. The 2019 Copa America official draw will take place on January 24th in Rio de Janeiro. Brazil will be hosting the 46th edition of the Football Cup next summer. 10 national teams from South America and 2 guest teams, Qatar and Japan, will compete in the tournament. We'll take another short break now. World News is next.
By inequalities, abuse of power, and injustice. The American journalist Abby Martin covers the struggle for fundamental rights worldwide, deepening into the search of files which uncover the empire's strategies through our screen and web platform in English. The Empire Files with Abby Martin. Tuesday, only on Telesur.
The ruling world order has always subjugated the masses. But who are the actors behind every move? What are their real interests? We analyze every move on critical moves. Weekdays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has vowed to reveal what he called the naked truth about the killing of the journalist Jamal Khashoggi. He said he will make a full statement on the case on Tuesday.
We are looking for justice here, and this will be revealed in all its naked truth, not through some honorary steps, but in all its naked truth.
Doubts are being raised about the results from Afghanistan's parliamentary elections on Sunday. Over 250 polling stations reported problems with the biometric verification devices. Critics also say officials have downplayed violence related to the election. According to the news agency AFP, the number of people killed and wounded in connection to the polls is nearly 300. Around 4 million people voted in the election.
So it's early that we judge about all the aspects of the process. Of course, the mismanagement and lack of preparation was worse than the previous election.
Hundreds of people have marched through the capital of Guinea-Bissau demanding transparency in the electoral consensus for the upcoming legislative elections. The census, which was scheduled to begin on August 23rd and last for 1 month, was postponed due to delays in the delivery of electronic equipment from Nigeria. According to the government, the census aims to register nearly 1 million people out of a population of about 1.7 million. Legislative elections are set for November 18th.
All we're calling for is total respect of the law, the census law, electoral law, but especially the rights of citizens.
Rebels have killed at least 11 people and abducted 15 others, including 10 children, in the Democratic Republic of Congo. According to military sources, the attack was carried out by fighters of the Allied Democratic Forces. A spokesman for the UN peacekeeping mission in the DRC said the peacekeepers had engaged in crossfire with suspected rebels near the border with Uganda.
We have only one concern, that the Congolese soldiers and blue helmets leave this region. There is a lot of disorder. If we have another group that will help us, no matter where they come from, as long as we are secure. May our soldiers leave us alone, we no longer need them.
And people in the eastern part of the DRC have been suffering because of war and conflict, which has taken a serious toll on residents, both physically and mentally. Bukavu, a trade center in the country's eastern region, has been a heavily contested area with frequent insurgent action, resulting in poverty for many of the residents. The Democratic Republic of Congo suffered from an 11-year civil war. Even now, there remains more than 40 armed groups in the eastern part of the country. Protesters in South Africa have forced the closure of a church that belongs to a pastor facing charges of raping several women. Members of the African National Congress and the opposition Economic Freedom Fighters gathered outside of the church demanding that it be shut down. Pastor Timothy Omotoso is currently on trial for sexually grooming and raping close to 30 teenage girls. Communal violence in northern Nigeria over the last few days has killed 55 people. The authorities say police have so far arrested 22 persons in connection to the clashes. Hundreds have already been killed this year. Security has become a key campaign issue ahead of the February 2019 election. A Tanzanian businessman who was kidnapped earlier this month has been freed and reunited with his family. In a tweet, Mohamed Duji had confirmed his release. He had been kidnapped outside a hotel in the city of Dar es Salaam. The Tanzania National Police Chief told the press conference that Duji is being questioned.
It was around 2:30 a.m. when I received a call from Mo himself saying he is free and safe. So we had to go and pick him up. Due to the fact that our family was overwhelmed with the good news, we had to go straight to pick him up in Gincana grounds, forgetting to inform the police security. But above all, Duji is back, safe, and he is doing fine.
One man has died on the razor wire-topped border fence between Spain and Morocco. 3 others were also injured as 300 migrants from sub-Saharan Africa rushed the fence. 200 of the migrants were able to scale the 23-foot-high metal fence and were taken to a reception center for identification, according to officials. Back in June, the Spanish Interior Minister had vowed to do everything possible to remove the razor wire, which lines the border fence between the 2 countries. That brings us to the end of this newscast. For these and many other stories, you can find them on our website at telesiotv.net/English. For viewers in Africa, remember we are on StarSat channel 461 in South Africa and channel 539 in Nigeria. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Telesio English, I'm Sony Gray. Thank you for watching.